Good evening and welcome to this forum. My name is Minda Ray Amaran and I'm co-vice president of the League of Women Voters of Bellingham-Whatcom County. The land we stand on is the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Lummi and Nooksack people, the original inhabitants of Washington's northernmost coast and southern British Columbia. Since time immemorial, they've celebrated and cared for their lands and waters to perpetrate their way of life. Please join me in deep gratitude for their ongoing wisdom and guidance as we take a moment to honor their ancestors and acknowledge the past, present, and future Lummi and Nooksack people as the original inhabitants of this land. This candidate forum is presented by the League of Women Voters of Bellingham-Whatcom County. The city of Ferndale has provided the facilities, and tonight's forum is being recorded by Robert Clark, KMRE board member. It will be rebroadcast on KMRE 88 FM, community radio, and the video recording will be available on demand on the League of Women Voters of Bellingham-Whatcom County website through Election Day, November 7th. No video recording by the audience is permitted. Our media partners are the Salish Current, the Ferndale Record, the Northern Light, the Linden Tribune, and KMRE 88 FM community radio. We thank them most sincerely for their support. Founded in 1920, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation of citizens in government. To that end, it works to acquaint people with their candidates, to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and also to influence public policy through education and advocacy. The League never endorses a candidate or a party. Membership is open to both men and women, 16 years old and older, and we cordially invite you all to join us. We say, democracy is not a spectator sport. I now turn this meeting over to the guidance of our moderator, Rebecca Johnson, who will explain the evening's proceedings.
Thank you, Minda Ray. Good evening. Tonight's forum is for the candidates for City of Ferndale Mayor, and there's two candidates on the ballot for this race, and I'd like to introduce the candidates, Greg Hansen and John Mutchler. The City of Ferndale Mayor exercises the responsibilities as outlined by law as Mayor Council Plan of Government. This includes exercising general supervision over the administrative affairs of the city, the responsibility for the appointment and removal of personnel, the execution of laws and policies as adopted by the City Council, and the mayor serves a 4-year term. We will follow specific rules for the debate tonight. There will be no opening statements. Instead, the introductory question is tailored to elicit responses consistent with an opening statement. Candidates will each have a minute and a half to respond to each question, and then will be asked to make a 1-minute closing statement at the end. The order of questions and the closing statements were decided by a dice toss earlier this evening. And then each of the candidates has a challenge card. Show me you've got your card. Candidates can use this card to challenge or rebut their opponent's response. The challenging candidate will have 30 seconds to state the challenge, and then your opponent will have 30 seconds to respond to the challenge. And each of you may use your card just one time. We have our timers here, Betty Baratz and Eileen McCracken, who will be tracking time, and they're right over here to your right. The timers are going to flash a yellow sign when you've got 15 seconds remaining, and then a red signal sign when it's time to stop. And if your candidates continue, then there's going to be a little bell to say, really, that means stop talking. So So we ask that you be respectful of the time allocated due to the limited amount of time, and that we have and our desire to include as many questions as possible. So now for the audience, what we want you to know is that I want to remind you that please hold your applause until the conclusion of the forum. We do encourage members of the audience to provide written questions for the candidates. These questions will need to be asked of both candidates. Ushers are available to pick up your questions, and they'll bring them to our screener here, Helen Campbell. And the questions will be screened by Helen, and the screening is for legibility and clarity and to avoid duplication of our other questions. So, all right, so here we go. To begin, candidate Mutchler,
Yes.
you're going to go first, and then after the start, we're going to go rotate back and forth. And then candidate Hansen is going to have the closing statements. So timers, are you ready? All right, at this time, here we go, our questions. Starting out, Ferndale has $1.8 million remaining of American Recovery Plan Act funds received as part of the federal government's COVID-19 response. What is the best use of these funds?
Thank you. I think it's closer to $1 million, but I won't quibble over $800,000. We spend it pretty quickly. My personal view is that we're going to be paying that back over decades with a larger national debt. Our children and grandchildren will be paying that money back. It was $4 trillion that the government borrowed in order to provide monies like that to cities and counties and states. I wish there was a way to benefit the whole community and not just pick a group or a service or a project, but do something for the whole community. And what we can do is apply it to infrastructure that we have to do. Ferndale has among the highest utility rates in the county. We just learned from our study. We could apply that $1 million to, say, for example, the well that we're putting in. We're going to put a well in. It's about $1 million. We could apply to that, and that would lower the future financial obligations to our citizens. So my personal goals is summed up in that there's got to be a way we can give it back to 16,000 citizens in lower taxes, lower fees, and that would be an easy way to do it. And we could legally do it that way.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Hansen, same question.
Sure. So Mr. Mutchler is correct. It's about $900,000 that we have left of ARPA funds. And so, I think to start, since the very beginning, I worked with council to establish first the guiding priorities for how we would spend ARPA, the $4.1 million that we originally received. And, we decided that it would be, the expenses had to be eligible for ARPA, but we wanted to make sure that, when we spent ARPA money, it was a unique opportunity, that we'd get the biggest bang for the buck, and that it would have a lasting impact for the community. Council decided that we would focus the use of ARPA funds on social services, on economic recovery, tourism assets, and for government needs. I mean, that was the original purpose for ARPA. To date, we've distributed about $3 million and fairly evenly across all of those initiatives. And, we can use that money to save everyone a few dollars on their water bill, or we can continue to use that money on things that will have a lasting impact, that will be the biggest bang for the buck, that will make investments that will be meaningful for this community for years and years to come. And so, choice in front of council, and I would advocate for doing things that will benefit this community for the next generation.
Thank you. All right, candidate Hansen, we're right back at you with this next question.
Okay.
Ferndale is one of the most diverse cities in our county. What are your plans to ensure the voices of all residents are heard on policy matters?
Well, first and foremost, I think that you're right. Ferndale is a very diverse community, and in many ways, that diversity is a strength. And so when you do listen to all the voices in our community, you end up making decisions that actually benefit everyone. Instead of just following social media, I make sure that I'm out there at community events and meetings and you name it to be able to talk one-on-one with individuals. And so, in doing so, I do collect a lot of ideas and opinions from individuals from across the diverse population in Ferndale. And so, I've made a habit of making sure that I'm available face to face at all of these different community events.
Thank you. Candidate Mutchler?
I'm going to pivot a degree or two and talk about the word respect, because it all comes down to respecting people. I respect Mayor Hansen. I respect Greg. I've known him 30 years. He was once my boss for a short period of time when he was the manager of restaurants up at the St. Mama Resort, and I was a lowly cocktail pianist in the corner trying to please customers. And I used to love watching Greg interact with customers and with employees. And Greg is truly a gentleman. And so unlike what we saw last night and what was supposed to be a forum for the Republican presidential primaries, it was a little more like a food fight. I think tonight you're going to see two gentlemen respecting each other, and I hope modeling how we treat our fellow citizens, regardless of their backgrounds or social economic needs. It really is about respect, which is valuing people even when we disagree. Greg and I are going to disagree on a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, I hope that you will say that two gentlemen went at it tonight.
Thank you. All right, Candidate Mutchler, you're on the third question here. The city is currently working on the design for a new city campus. The facility would include a new courthouse, city hall, and council chambers. This would free up current facilities for community use. What is your opinion of this plan, and is this the best use of the city's resources?
Haven't thought about it very much, and I'm being silly here. This is probably the major issue that the mayor and I fall on different sides. We have a building right now, the City Hall, that was built in 1980. It's a solid building. It's safe, it's reliable, it's functional, and importantly, it can be expanded upon. It's an office building, and most of our government is basically office, need for office. Most citizens in the city of Ferndale will never visit City Hall. No reason to. We can pay our bills online, we can do most of our services over the internet, and I would say it's quite possible, because one of our administrators suggested that the city hall, this new city hall, would be kind of like the city's living room. I wouldn't be surprised if I have more people visit my living room as a pastor and as a piano teacher than might visit City Hall. And I keep an eye on things at City Hall. I don't see the same value of a new campus as the mayor does. I respect his opinion. I struggled with the issue when I was mayor and thought that expanding the current facility is the better way to go. He and it appeared to be most of the council want to head in a different direction. I might respectfully disagree with it. We're currently in the courthouse right now, and we come in here. This is the most people I've ever seen in this courtroom since COVID. And this is a little bit more than the number of people that are here during court. It's just not used that much, and this place is working pretty good.
Thank you. You have time. That's great. Okay, Candidate Hansen, same question.
Sure.
Do you want me to repeat that, or?
No, I think I
Okay,
got it.
great.
Yep. All right. Well, so, I think what I would say is that the need for additional room for city operations has been, a challenge for the last 4 administrations of the city of Ferndale. It's something that the last 4 mayors have wrestled with, including myself. The administration before mine discussed no less than 5 different proposals for adding space for city needs. Including, add-ons to the police station, renovations to Ferndale High School's Old Main, and a variety of other initiatives. The city's need for space isn't new. And, I believe actually we have a very unique opportunity right now. We've been able to, get grant funding that will pay for easily a third, if not more, of this project. It's a unique time. In addition to that, we've been able to set aside revenues that were unexpected due to COVID. We had to slam on the brakes onto city operations in the midst of COVID. That saved us a lot of money. We've been setting that money aside. Right now, I hear the community members who say, why aren't you doing something about roads? And I get that, but right now, our public works staff is maxed out. And this need for city facilities is actually creating a situation where we're having to push pause on a number of projects because we simply don't have the room for the staff we need in order to move some of these larger projects forward.
Thank you. Okay, candidate Hansen. Could you please explain your ideas for creating excellent working relationships between the mayor's office and the city council?
Sure. I think, first and foremost, it's a matter of respect. And so I think that most all of the council members that have worked with me over the last 4 years will say that I give you time. I sit down with you, I listen, we meet, we discuss issues. And, you know, using the civic campus as an example, you know, I sat down and spent time with every single council member, especially those that were actually interested in moving the project forward, and talked to them about, you know, what did they need in order to be on board with this project? What are your concerns, and how can I alleviate those concerns? And I do that with most every issue where I understand that, you know, council members are challenged by some of the things that are in front of them. And so, you know, first and foremost, I develop a relationship by inviting them down to my office, you know, taking their phone calls and taking the time that they need to talk through those issues. I try really hard to remind them that, you know, when I'm, you know, on my soapbox and being political, and when I'm just there to answer questions, to offer advice, to provide resources, and make sure that they're in a position to make decisions that they're most comfortable with. Because in the end, right, they're all elected officials as well. And so I want to make sure that they can look themselves in the mirror and their constituents in the eyes and justify the decisions that they make.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Mutchler?
I would agree with the mayor, and he's been just that to the council, to the staff, a straight-up guy. But it does depend on your personnel, and one of the things I feel good about in my efforts as mayor, as a council member, and then when I wasn't council, is in recruiting terrific people to run for council. Our current council has 7 members. 5 of them are there because of direct or indirect efforts on my part to recruit, train, and promote. And more than just how they sit on the political spectrum, is that they need to be quality people. We've had acrimonious councils before, lots of fighting before. That has practically, if not completely, disappeared, I think, because of the quality of people that now serve. And I've made the effort to do that. 4 of the 5 staff members, department heads that were here when Mayor Hansen took over 4 years ago were people that I hired and he kept, and they were quality people. So I think it has to do with who the leaders are, of course, but also the people that you hire and recruit, and the people that the citizens vote to put into office.
Thank you. Okay, candidate Mutchler. The Cascadia Daily News reported this summer that 3 public water systems had run dry, and others were on the fringe of emergency situations. What actions or changes, if any, should be made to the Ferndale City's water system plan, given this information?
The city of Ferndale is on a very healthy course in terms of long-term water supply. We left the river a number of years ago, very controversial, but it's done. And now we use well water. We felt that the current well that we were using, that we had legal rights to, were being underutilized. So we began to drill up there by the police station. And we realized that we weren't going to get more water out of that aquifer, which is about 140 feet below the surface. So the consultants and well companies said, why don't we dig further, because we think there could be another aquifer. The city, it's a great story, but the city went about 1,037 feet, as I recall, somewhere in that neighborhood, and we found an aquifer. We had a lot of suspicion there would be one that's completely untouched. Nobody else is using it. Nobody has any. You kind of do a DNA test of water. Nobody was using this water. So not only were we able to drill and tap a nice, wonderful, full source of water for the city, we're now drilling a second well on that same deep water aquifer, so we have water for the future. So the more water we can get from that aquifer, it's going to put less of a strain on others that are in the that might be tied in the current aquifer. So we're in good shape. I think others are in good shape too, as they exercise good stewardship.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Hansen.
Yeah. I think everything that John said and then some. Yes, we are fortunate that we found the deep aquifer that's going to provide us with a water resource for hopefully generations to come. But I think that we have to be very mindful of the adjudication process that the Whatcom County has just undertaken, because the city of Ferndale is going to have to justify our water rights along with everyone else's, and that's going to be a bit of a prickly process. And I think that it's really important that the city of Ferndale be very, very engaged in that, because while there are plenty of farmers around the fringes of the city of Ferndale, it's our water rights that are actually providing water for the 16,000 and soon to become many more residents of the city of Ferndale. But I think even more than that, thinking about long-term water needs, we have to make sure that we don't underfund the utility. And so, candidate Mutchler will talk about trying to lower your water rates, and I respect that. My water bill is ridiculous, but at the same time, we do have long-term needs that are going to require funding, and if we underfund that utility, we're going to end up in serious trouble.
Okay, thank you. Okay, candidate Hansen, this is question number 6. What is your position regarding the Catalyst program for economic development to encourage affordable housing and new businesses in the core of the city? And how do you evaluate its potential for success given the pandemic, which began shortly after its adoption?
Can I ask for clarification?
You may.
So are we talking about the Catalyst program that was passed by council in 2019 that gave incentives to?
I believe that is the
Okay.
Catalyst
All right.
program.
I just
Thank
want to
you.
make
No,
sure.
it's very helpful.
Yeah. So, I was all for the Catalyst program, and I think that one of the things that I've always wanted to work on as an elected official was to figure out how to get more energy, more to revitalize the downtown. And when you couple that with the needs for affordable housing, the Catalyst program just made sense. It encourages density in the downtown, which brings people living downtown, which then makes opening a business downtown viable. And in fact, I know of a couple of businesses that have located downtown in the hopes that those Catalyst projects will move forward. And so I think that it's a great idea. It's a very shrewd use of public funds, in the sense that we're not actually spending money. What we're doing is we're foregoing those fees. But that's one of the only things that we can really do to try to drive both residents in the downtown and then also commercial space in the downtown. The city of Ferndale's downtown has been decimated, over the last 3 decades by kind of the suburban mall effect. And so I think just in the last few years, we're starting to see some energy in the downtown. And I would hope that if we do get 1, 2, or all 3 of those Catalyst projects going, it'll change the game for downtown, and it'll be a reason for people to spend time here and not go to Bellingham.
Okay, great.
The mayor is completely correct. If you stand at one end of Main Street and look down and pull up a picture of 50 years ago, it looks pretty much the same. Lots of reasons for it. It's near the river, lots are small and odd shaped, and it's just very difficult to build. So we weren't receiving money anyway from those non-developments. And so what we did is say, we're not getting money anyway, let's not collect if somebody goes ahead and does something big to start things off. I think it was a smart rule, and I'd like to call out the city administrator, who at the time was the planning director, Yori Burnett, at the direction of the mayor, who basically said, figure something out. He somehow weaved his way through a lot of legal stuff and difficult challenges to come up with a plan that we could legally do, because you're not supposed to play favorites. You're not supposed to publicly gift things. But he found a legal way for us to say, if you start this thing, we will cut way back on the fees and the permitting and the impacts and the hookups and things like that. And so we have 2 or 3 projects online, and we're just crossing our fingers. It was interrupted by COVID. And credit to the mayor for bringing back to council an extension. These things were going to die on the vine, because of COVID, but we brought forth a generous amount of extension for these developers to make something happen.
Great, thank you, thank you. Candidate Mutchler, what steps would you propose to mitigate the impacts of climate change on the city?
Well, I think we need to follow all the laws and all the rules. I think the city has done that. We will continue to do that. It's a trade-off, isn't it? I look at the price of a home to be built. I happen to had the privilege of serving on the Whatcom Skagit Housing. They're the self-help home builders. They have built some 800 homes in Whatcom County, 400 in Ferndale. Full disclosure, 3 of my children have built these homes. And every time I help build one, I note the code gets more strict. For example, insulation. Things I would never have thought of insulating get insulated or get caulked or things like that to reach energy standards to combat energy waste and climate challenges. It's a trade-off. And I think that we just keep following the code. I don't want to increase the expectations because it is a trade-off. And I think they're pretty high right now. And so I would resist any kind of voluntary making it more difficult for homes to be built because they're already rather expensive right now.
Thank you. Candidate Hansen?
Sure. Well, I think, one of the first things and the most obvious things is, we have to, it gets back to our water resource. And so, I know that some people scoff when we put out the water restriction signs in the middle of the summer. And, the reality of that is that it is still a limited water resource. And even though it pours from the sky during a fair portion of the year, we still have to pull that up out of the ground, filter it, put it in the pipes and get it to your home. And all of that costs a substantial amount of money. And so, making sure that we are encouraging water conservation. But I think the other big thing is that climate change is going to bring an evolution of our river. And we saw what the Whatcom County is calling a 30-year flood, but it was the worst flood in 50 years in Ferndale in 2021. And I think the reality is that with climate change, we're likely to see those sorts of events continue. And so I think a big part of it is resilience. Stand repeated floods.
Thank you. Candidate Hansen, what is your philosophy on the naming of the new Thornton Road overpass?
I don't fully understand the need to name everything. And so, in my world, in my view, I love naming things after where they're at. So if, we're talking about a new stage in Pioneer Park, my preference would be to call it the stage in Pioneer Park. We're building a new, we're just about to open the Thornton Street overpass. I'd like to call it the Thornton Street overpass. I don't personally believe that, that we should go around naming public infrastructure after individuals. And there are laws in the state of Washington that actually prohibit the naming of certain pieces of infrastructure after individuals that were involved in finding the funding for those pieces of infrastructure. So, if it were up to me, we would just call things what they were, and we find other ways to honor those individuals who had a significant impact on our communities.
Thanks. Candidate Mutchler?
So in a few weeks, there'll be a ribbon cutting. And all of us who are elected officials will want to stand up there behind that ribbon and take an ounce of credit for that. But the person who made it happen is not here. And he passed away tragically. Senator Erickson, whom I'm proud to say was a friend of mine. Didn't always agree with Doug, but I respected him. And so several of us on council said that would be nice because we would not be opening that bridge without Senator Erickson. I didn't anticipate the pushback. I was surprised. I thought, if If it had been someone from the other party, I would have supported the idea if they had been that significant. So what has evolved is a slight change. I think we're close to, I think, what would be a healthy naming, to name it after Thornton, Augustus Thornton. Augustus Thornton was the first doctor in Ferndale and the first pharmacist in Ferndale. He was also the first one to open up his checkbook and donate money for the first hospital in Whatcom County. Also donated land to up there at the corner of Church and Thornton Road that is now a church. It happens to be the pastor. So I'm kind of a big fan of Thornton, and I bet you right now you know more about Dr. Thornton than you did before you got here. I like to see it called the Dr. Augustus Thornton overpass, so people ask the question, who was Thornton? And they'll know.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, candidate Mutchler, how do you envision the mayor's role in influencing future land use and economic development at Cherry Point?
Well, that's a deja vu question because we had the Seattle Marine want to do their large development out there at Cherry Point. And I was thrilled at the possibility of jobs that would be six-figure jobs. Not service sector jobs, restaurant jobs, but jobs that would pay well going out there. That didn't happen, and that's fine. But I would be supportive of what's not in the city. We do have an influential voice as mayors, and I would certainly encourage any kind of development that would be safe, environmentally sound, of course legal, that would bring jobs to the community. It is an utterly unique piece of property on the west coast of the United States. It is something very special should go there, and I hope that it does. And the right vision and the right idea that's going to protect Whatcom County, protect the environment, protect the economy here, I'll likely get behind it.
Great, thank you.
Well, so, I mean, John is right. That's not within Ferndale's jurisdiction. We really have very little actual control over the land use and what happens out there. But it is important to the city of Ferndale. It's part of our DNA. It's actually that region is what built Ferndale. And so, I think that it falls on the mayor to continue to advocate for good blue-collar jobs out at Cherry Point. As mayor, I wrote letters in support of Blue Wolf that was trying to reopen the aluminum smelter out there. I wrote a letter of support for AltaGas, Petrogas, to do hydrogen generation out there. And so I'll continue to advocate for heavy industry out at Cherry Point because that's where the families in Ferndale work. That's how we've been able to enjoy the prosperity in Ferndale that we've had over the last 50 years. And so I believe that it's critical that the mayor adopt that area as Ferndale's and advocate full-throated for the continued use of that site for heavy industry, so that we can continue to have the great paying jobs that Cherry Point has provided for Ferndale for generations.
Great, thank you. I want to remind our audience that we'd welcome questions from you, because we could even be a little short up here, so we're counting on the good citizens of Ferndale to ask your mayoral candidate some questions, if you would. And so while you all got your little thinking caps on and your nice penmanship ready to go, I'm going to ask the next question.
Or we could just take more time with each question.
Yeah.
Or we could wrap it up.
Yeah, or you guys could challenge one another too. That's a good minute. So, in fact, that would be two. Yeah, that's okay.
I get it.
Appreciate the respectfulness,
Sure.
and we do appreciate that, and we think that those challenges are a nice way to do that too.
Yep.
So just looking at my clock.
Okay.
So, candidate Hansen,
Yep.
the proposed jail site is in Ferndale. If the jail initiative is successful and the jail is built, what do you think the impacts will be to the city, and what should the city do to prepare for those impacts?
I think, well, so first and foremost, I think that the city of Ferndale welcomes the new jail proposal for sure. It's absolutely critical for our community, for all of Whatcom County. If you've ever been to the Whatcom County Jail, you know what a terrible facility is at this point. It's inhumane. That it locates itself in Ferndale, I'm ambivalent. I think that ultimately it was the site that it needed. That's the site that it needs to be. That's going to be the lowest cost site for all of Whatcom County. In terms of limiting its impacts, I think that, our community development department, our city will work through the plans for that jail to make sure that it meets all of our city codes and meets all of our city needs. We're not going to just give away everything to Whatcom County. They're going to need to do all of the system upgrades, the road improvements, the intersection improvements. They're going to need to be able to they're going to have to pay all of the water and sewer connections. It's not going to be inexpensive because it is going to have significant impacts on the city. It's going to take a part of our water utility and our sewer utility, and we're going to need to make sure that those impacts are compensated for by Whatcom County. But beyond that, I think that we're happy to do our part for the rest of Whatcom County to have a new safe jail facility in Ferndale.
Thank you. Candidate Mutchler.
I perhaps have been in that jail more than anybody in this room. That probably didn't sound right, did it? You get the phone call that someone and pastors used to have the privilege to go in there and be with people, and it's just a heartbreaking place to see people on the worst day in the worst place in the world, and it needs to be replaced. The city of Ferndale went through the work and efforts a number of years ago to pass an essential facilities ordinance. You can't block facilities from coming. You can't block hospitals, schools, jails, police stations from coming to your city. You can't do that by law. But you can create ordinances that mitigate those impacts, things like setbacks and design and things like that. And we did that. And so this jail, should they decide to build it here, well, it'll look like a community college. I'm not saying one of the impacts, but it will be as safe as you can get. Because I know there are community members that live up there that are concerned. It'll have tremendous positive financial benefits to the city in three ways. Number one, the sales tax, the 0.02% sales tax will come back to the city of Ferndale in part for a number of years. Number two is the construction costs. There will be sales tax collected every 2x4, every sheet of plywood that's brought in. It's a one-time bump we'll see in our sales tax like we've done before. And finally, there'll be annual payments to the city in sales tax that the city will enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Candidate Mutchler. Ferndale has been known as one of the most affordable cities in the county, but prices have increased. As mayor, how would you preserve and increase affordable housing in the city?
There isn't a silver bullet. I mentioned I'm honored to serve on the board of Whatcom Skagit Housing. We've built 400 homes in Ferndale, which is about 8% of the entire housing inventory. Those homes are about 12, 13, 1,400 feet, and they're used by multiple families. Two of my children that had built one, then sold them to move to their next home. So those homes come back on the market. That's a fabulous partnership with the county. The county provides what's called EDI money, about $20,000 a year to pay for the impacts, and the homeowner has to pay that back, that $20,000 of fees that they have waived at a whopping 1% a year. So there's some cool programs that really work, and we create these instant neighborhoods with these self-help home builders because they're together building these houses. And think of the quality of people that you're going to be living with in a neighborhood that actually built their own homes. That's probably why Ferndale is such a cool place. It's just one of a number of things that we can do, but it's a start. And that's why I think Ferndale is a more affordable, not affordable, but more affordable place for people to live.
Thank you. Candidate Hansen?
Sure. So, affordable housing, as Mr. Mutchler indicated, that's a difficult thing for small cities. Small city governments can't buy their way out of housing affordability. And, I think the best thing that cities like Ferndale can do is to do their best to clear the playing field for developers to build the spectrum of housing. And the city of Ferndale has worked with our partners like Whatcom Skagit Housing, but also the Colshan Land Trust and the Opportunity Council, which are working on a project right near the Thornton Street overpass. And looking for other opportunities with providers who specialize in these affordable housing projects. I think, though, that the city can do even more. The city of Ferndale has been a strong advocate with our legislative delegation on condominium reform so that we can build more condominiums, because that's what young people can actually afford to buy in Ferndale. And then, start building equity. But I think even going even further, the city can do things. We can't gift public funds, but we can do things like purchase property that then we turn around and sell to organizations like the Colshan Land Trust or Opportunity Council, so that they can do their affordable housing projects, and then leverage economic development dollars to help with infrastructure and other things to make these projects work.
Okay, thank you. We have a challenge from candidate Mutchler.
I just wanted to use it
I
once.
appreciate it.
Well, I'm going to try it out, but I'm not going to challenge the mayor. Just going to add to it. ADUs, accessory dwelling units, mother-in-law suites. Ferndale led the way. In fact, there was a real nice article in the Bellingham Herald about 6 years ago. Pushed through peer pressure, neighborhood pressure, because Bellingham had a hard time adopting an ADU ordinance, but we did it, and we made it more robust a couple years ago, so people can now add onto their houses and provide apartments and things like that. That first-time home for a lot of people. I'd like to see a lot more of that. I'd like to do one myself. I haven't figured out how to do it, but it's a lot more. It's much more possible here in Ferndale than it was before.
Thank you. Do you want to?
I 100% agree. Ferndale has been kind of on the front edge of a lot of different affordable housing initiatives. And so whether it's ADUs or whether it's duplexes by right, the city of Ferndale has kind of been way in front of places like Bellingham. And in fact, we've been recognized by a number of different organizations for being kind of forward on this particular topic. And so while, it's getting expensive to live in Ferndale, we're doing things to make it less so.
Thank you. Okay, candidate Mutchler. No, excuse me, candidate Hansen. Ferndale created the North County Poverty Task Force to address the particular issues related to poverty in Ferndale. The task force issued recommendations in 2020. What do you believe is the impact of the task force's recommendations on what the city is doing to combat poverty? And what else should the city be doing to address poverty?
That's an interesting question. So the city did, begin some of the initiatives. I think one of the biggest, most visible things that the city did, that was one of the recommendations of the North Whatcom County Poverty Task Force, was we used ARPA money to stand up the Ferndale Community Services. At that time, the Ferndale Community Service Cooperative. They occupied the building right across the way, and that organization's sole purpose is to help individuals who are struggling to make ends meet. And so, they do everything from the clothing bank to the community garden to the other bank and other things. And I think that standing them up with an executive director has really energized that organization. And we can go down this road talking about the safe parking issue that has kind of put Facebook on fire over the last couple of days, but that is an initiative that came out of Ferndale Community Services in direct response to the findings of the North Whatcom County Poverty Task Force. Every night, if you go around Ferndale, you will see people sleeping in their cars. And so while I understand that that's a scary prospect for Ferndale, and I don't necessarily believe that that's the right thing to do, it is addressing a current issue that is likely to just get worse.
Thank you. Candidate Mutchler?
I get up crazy early sometimes, and for some reason feel I need to go to the post office, and there are people now sleeping in the post office. back in the corner there, especially when it's colder. I appointed the first poverty task force, and I have to confess, haven't followed it closely, but what I do recall, something the city did that was interesting because it dealt with church-state issues, was made sure our ordinances and our codes were clear enough that churches had a constitutional right to help people. And that helping of people might include letting them stay in the church, families stay in the church. Two of our churches, I think, in the city here, used the Family Promise program. So I tend to think that organizations that have big hearts, and most churches do the best at not just housing people and feeding people, but actually help them get on the right track in their own hearts and souls. We all have a part to play. We all do. Jesus said, you'll always have the poor with you. So there's the challenge.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for the audience for the question. One of the constituents out here is asking, will my property taxes increase again with a new city campus? And if yes, how much? And this is going to go to candidate Mutchler.
Yeah. No, I would not support any property tax increase. And the reason why is the council felt it needed to increase property taxes by a historically large amount. It was 41%. I went back and did the math, and it was 41%. As they took bank capacity that we had at the time, it was done for a noble reason, taking care of cops, taking care of police officers' salaries and benefits. But when all was said and done, it appeared to me that it was probably excessive. And it's excessive to the amount that we've been able to put money away for the new city campus. I would argue that it was the property tax increase that we took in 2019 that I attempted to veto, but it was overridden, has provided the revenues, a significant amount of the revenues for this campus. So it is currently property taxes that are paying for it. And I'm concerned that by using that, we will use it up, and then there will come a need someday, and it might not be for the campus, but some other need will come up that we'll have to say, gosh, we're kind of backed up against the wall. We'll need to raise property taxes again. Maybe not directly for the campus, but indirectly because we use those resources.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Hansen?
No. We're not going to need to raise property taxes in order to pay for the civic campus. And in fact, as stated before, we've got a third of it's already been paid for with grant funds. The other excess revenues are not related to over taxing of people's property, but more what I call the COVID bonus, right? It was slamming the brakes on city operations, which saved us a fair amount of money. We put a hiring moratorium on for nearly 2 years. But we also had higher than expected sales tax because of the COVID effect. We had, extraordinary sales taxes related to the $100 million high school, and those are the monies that we've set aside. The 41% increase in property taxes, that sounds like a big number, but it was actually it was about $300,000 a year. That went to make sure that we could give our police officers a pay raise, so that we could continue to attract and keep police officers here in Ferndale rather than having them jump ship and go to other jurisdictions. So property tax is one of the smallest revenue streams that the city has. We make more in sales tax. We make more in our solid waste tax than we collect in sales tax. And so it's a small amount.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's great. All right, candidate Hansen, and there's really speaking to both of you, but candidate Hansen gets to answer first. You have both been mayor, and in your positions as mayor, how have you helped Ferndale the most?
That's a challenging question for me. I've said this probably 100 times now, but I got to be mayor under normal circumstances for about 2.5 months, and then COVID hit, and pardon the language, but all hell broke loose. And so honestly, I don't know what the job was supposed to be. All I know is what I was forced to actually try to do. And so, as mayor, the first year was spent just trying to figure out what this meant for the community, what this meant for the organization. And fortunately, some of my experience in the hospitality industry led me to be able to, as I've said before, slam the brakes on the operation and make sure that we pulled back everything because we didn't know what was happening with COVID. Then, as things went through the ups and downs, all of a sudden now we're getting, grant funds, ARPA funds, CARES Act funds. And so then it became a matter of, as mayor, what's the highest and best use of those funds? Those are things that were totally unexpected, and so I spent a lot of time and energy trying to navigate how we take this unexpected windfall and make sure that we put it towards the highest and best purpose for this community for the long term.
Okay, great. Candidate Mutchler?
That's a tough one, but because I think there are a lot of things we can both be proud of in our service. I'm pleased as punch that somehow we were lucky enough, skillful enough, fortunate enough in the right place to bring in $21 million so we could alleviate a tremendous amount of traffic problems we have here in Ferndale and allow about half of the city to have easy access to I-5 on the Thornton overpass, which I believe will be opening up in weeks, and thus alleviating a lot of traffic in the downtown core. I remember thinking maybe we'll get 5 or 6 million from the state, and we got some 19, and it became $21 million. I was very pleased with the staff I left behind. I mentioned that earlier. I felt like I left the city in good hands with the mayor. I have a lot of respect for Greg, but I think we gave it to him. Okay. I look at finance director we hired, stole from Linden. I look at a planning director that we brought up through the ranks, a chief of police that we stole from Utah, and also a Ferndale boy who grew up here, became our planning director, and now is our city administrator, our top employee of the city. I don't think anybody would argue those aren't some of the finest people on the planet, and I'm pleased that I was able to leave those to the next mayor.
Great, thank you. Okay, this is your last question from us, and then we're going to have to ask you each to do your closing remarks. So this is going to go to candidate Mutchler. How do diversion, alternative sentencing, treatment, and similar initiatives fit into the city's justice system?
This is our court. It's a court of limited jurisdictions. We deal with misdemeanors, gross misdemeanors, speeding tickets, things like that. This is a matter for the county. This is a matter for our new jail. And so I have seen, and I was on the jail task force for a short while, and I've seen a lot of give and take and push and pull to make sure that they have those diversionary measures and those extra beds and things like that. And I'm not smart enough to say how many beds we should have or shouldn't have, but I think at the end of the day, this thing's going to pass this time. I noticed that the city of Bellingham endorsed it this time. I don't think that happened before. So I think every single city council is saying they're on board. Let's get this thing done. It's going to be so much better than what we have right now. So those are more in the realm of the county, not so much the mayor of Ferndale, but I think it all ties in with the fact that we are supporting it very heartily here in Ferndale, the new jail.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have to agree with John that in many cases, diversion and treatment, those sorts of things are not really, part of the Ferndale justice system because we are a misdemeanor court. We do a limited amount of diversion and other things, but for the most part, that falls to the responsibility of Whatcom County. But talking about the jail in general, I agree. I echo Mr. Mutchler in saying that it's about time, right? This will be the third shot at trying to get this jail passed, and it's an absolutely necessary piece of infrastructure for Whatcom County in many ways, because it's not just a jail. It's also going to be a behavioral health center where individuals who are struggling with mental health, they're struggling with drug addiction, this will be the point of entry for them, to get them on a track towards a better life. Attending the opioid summit that was held by the Chuckanut Health Foundation here a few months ago, one of the things that became very, very clear is that for many people who are struggling with mental health and drug addiction combined, they simply are not going to get better unless they are removed from their current situation and put into a behavioral health center where they can get clean of the drugs so that they can then start to work on their mental health so that they can become productive citizens. And I think that it's important for us to support that new jail project.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to closing statements, and we're going to start with candidate, Mutchler. You'll each have a 1 minute closing statement, so please go ahead.
Oh, I think I've said it all, other than I appreciate the league. And we'll say this again about the League of Women Voters, that you do your homework. We all in this room could tell that you have done your research, and I think that makes it fun. I've probably been through more forums than anybody in the room, and they can be rather boring. Okay, what are you going to do for world peace? What are you going to do? What are your budget priorities? I mean, you guys have been, I know you haven't been coming to our meetings because there's nobody here at our meetings, but you have done your research, and it shows. And I want to commend you and suggest a round of applause for the amazing work that you've done tonight.
Okay, thank you. We're going to do that at the end. Thank you. Thank you. Candidate Hansen, you have 1 minute.
Sure. So, it's been the privilege of a lifetime to be mayor of the city of Ferndale. This is the community that I grew up in, and there's no better way to serve your community than to be able to do something like this. And despite the extraordinary times that we've been through for the last 4 years, Ferndale's in a great place as we head into the next 4 years. And success for this community does not happen by accident. That's why I show up at City Hall every single day and do my best on behalf of this community. Steady leadership, results-based solutions, and doing the hard work today to prepare for tomorrow have been my guiding principles for the last 4 years. The last 4 years have been busy, but the work's not done. We still need to work on affordable and workforce housing to improve our roads and infrastructure, and to fight to ensure that there's opportunity for everyone in our community. So now more than ever, Ferndale needs a mayor, needs a leader that's authentic, humble, and collaborative. And I humbly ask for your vote this November.
Okay, thank you. So on behalf of the League of Women Voters, I do want to thank the candidates for being here today and for your interest in running for public office. Voters, you can find out more information about the candidates online at vote411.org and in your voter pamphlet. Please remember that your ballots are going to be mailed out on October 18th, and that your ballot must be postmarked or dropped in a ballot box before 8 p.m. on November 7th, 2023. And please remember to sign your ballot envelope. And if you're mailing by postal service, we do recommend you mail early. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.